Do you know how it feels being a climate scientist in 2026? We're about to enter the 5th heatwave of the year in the UK. And although it might not be that unusual in terms of the number of heatwaves, we must remember that we're still only in August. And we normally get between 4 to 10 heat waves a year, but the length and severity of the heat waves in 2026 are what has made them unusual. We have now reached a new maximum number of days above 30 degrees Celsius in the UK. Previously, the record was set in 1995. As of the 10th of August, today, we are now at 35 days above 30 degrees C in a year. And it's almost certain that we're going to break that again this week as temperatures rise to 36 degrees Celsius. And the Met Office are in fact even considering issuing another one of their very rare extreme red heat warnings for that 36 degree day. We've already seen an amber UK Health Security Agency advisory warning, which basically issues warnings that the health impacts, especially on vulnerable populations, people in care homes, people in hospitals, nurseries, schools, etc., are at higher risk from. This year, we've already seen really devastating impacts of the heat waves that we've already had. So that European heat wave that we had in June, the super humid one that you will remember if you lived through it or you watched this video up here, it's thought to have killed around 20,000 people, and we know that it could not have happened without climate change. In fact, World Weather Attribution, which detects the fingerprint of climate change in specific events and does these rapid attribution analyses, showed and said that that heat wave would have been virtually impossible without human-caused climate change, and it made the nighttime temperatures about 100 times more likely than they would have been just 2 decades ago. So those nighttime temperatures, which were largely above 20 degrees for 10 days straight, it prevented all of our bodies from recovering fully, so it amplifies the heat stress that you kind of accumulate over the period of the heat wave. And of course, the extreme temperatures in the daytime as well pose a threat to life. Not only has climate change made those kinds of temperatures more likely, it's also made the highest temperatures during heat waves hotter. So a comparable event in 1976, just 50 years ago, would have been 3.5 degrees cooler at maximum. So we have warmed our climate, and we're warming the extremes especially. We've also seen associated with those heat waves wildfires more recently, and that's because of the drought, and I made a video about that up here as well. We saw enormous fires in France and across Spain. Part of that is to do with land management. There was a lot of fire in the kind of dense plantation woodland in France, but also because of climate heating, and climate heating makes the conditions for fire to spread much more likely, which means that when you do get an ignition, whether it's from a discarded cigarette or misuse of some kind of machinery or whatever it is, those fires can then spread really rapidly. In Spain, it was a slightly different picture because we had a really wet winter, which meant that loads of vegetation grew, and then immediately a drought and really record heat. So you had lots of stuff to burn and also the conditions that make fires spread more rapidly. So we had like a perfect storm ultimately, loads of fuel and the conditions for those fires to spread really fast. So kind of it's been described as whiplash conditions. And we know that climate heating made those fire conditions more likely. Again, World Weather Attribution did another rapid analysis on this particular event, and they showed that the fires in Spain were made 20 times more likely by climate heating. And in France, they say a conservative estimate would be double as likely. The news cycle appears to have moved on because now we have Canadian wildfires, which are, in the words of their fire monitoring service, out of control. In fact, so out of control that the federal government is sending in help to British Columbia, where a lot of them are. They're already self-sustaining, so they're already generating their own weather, which allows the fires to spread further and also to ignite elsewhere. And that means we're seeing really poor air quality across Canada and the USA. You can see from this map that there are a huge amount of fires burning The red ones are the ones that are out of control, and the larger the circle, the bigger the fire. There are lots that are out of control and some that are being monitored and are out of control, but they're in more remote places. It's not a very rosy picture. There's quite a lot across Ontario as well. And I can actually also, I think, add the smoke from satellite data over the top. So this is having a real considerable impact on the air quality, particularly on the Pacific side of Canada and the USA. So you're seeing this smoke traveling really, really far and impacting air quality and people's ability to breathe clean air very widely, and also, of course, releasing vast amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. In Canada, there's been 4 million hectares burned so far. In Europe, we've seen the highest burned area on record, and that's an eighth of the size of what's happening in Canada. 500,000 hectares in Europe, which is beating 2025 by over 100,000 hectares and is more than double the long-term average for this time of year. This feels like as good a time as any to plug my Patreon, and if you value these videos, if you think they are adding something to your life, if you think they are worth watching, if you share them, then please do consider supporting the channel. Obviously, if you can contribute financially to supporting the channel, that is very much appreciated, and you can do that over on my Patreon, which I'll put a link to up here and in the pinned comment and in the description. But I know that supporting YouTubers on Patreon is a luxury, so if you can't afford it right now, then absolutely do not stress about it. Sharing, liking, commenting, and of course subscribing to the channel are all really, really helpful too. So if you do value these videos, then please do those things as well. And if you can afford to chip in a couple of quid, then I very, very much appreciate it. Now, let's get back to the good news. So we're seeing wildfires really gripping lots of different parts of the planet. And unfortunately, this means that we should expect food shortages, we should expect price rises, the impact of the poor harvest and farmers really struggling to grow their crops and to harvest their crops. They will be felt pretty soon, and especially as it gets to later on in the year. That drought, that heat, that wildfire, they're all piling on top of the shortages of things like fertilizer and fuel that are, thanks to Donald Trump's war in Iran and Russia's war in Ukraine, that are creating these shortages. And we are going to feel the effects later this year and next year. This is going to be bad and expensive, and we're all going to pay the price. I'm tired. I'm really tired of having to do these videos, but I'm also really tired of all the resistance, all the bots, and I don't want to sound like I've got a tinfoil hat on, but misinformation and disinformation is everywhere at the moment. And all those data centers that they're opening are being used to run AI-fueled bot farms to flood the zone. You can see it in my YouTube comments. You can see it in my Instagram comments. You can see it on my TikTok comments. It is exhausting and it's really difficult to keep on top of it. But that is literally the point. That is what they want. They want people to stop talking about this. And by they, I mean the 0.1% of people who are actually benefiting from this catastrophe. It's fossil fuel companies, it's companies that mine or extract resources, it's the big agricultural companies that have an interest in perpetuating the status quo and making sure we're all eating loads of meat and dairy. It's companies that have an interest and benefit financially from this mess continuing. And don't forget also that lots of this is funded by the far right. In the US, it's Trump and MAGA backed. In the UK, it's backed by Reform. People like the head of GB News, which is basically the UK right's answer to Fox News. They've all invested billions in fossil fuels. Again, it sounds like a conspiracy, but it's been shown in evidence. If you're interested in this sort of kind of shadowy backing of fossil fuel interests, then I really recommend the publication DeSmog. They've done some great investigations, and some of those statistics come from them. These are people that benefit from denial and delay and a lack of action. And ultimately, the result is the same. Climate heating continues, we all suffer, they reap the rewards, and then eventually they'll jet off to their lovely securitized bunkers somewhere and live happily ever after, lol, whilst the rest of us drown and or burn and or starve to death. This hasn't been a particularly cheery video, and maybe you can tell that I'm pretty exhausted by both the climate change and the climate denial. But I'm going to keep doing this because it's the only way that we can keep getting the message out there, and it's maybe the bare minimum of what I can do, but it is really important that we all keep talking about climate heating and that we show the evidence and that we talk about it in a sensible way. Because the deniers thrive from confusion and doubt and sowing these seeds of confusion everywhere so that nobody knows who to trust or what to believe. I actually do genuinely think that talking about it is really important. And in fact, I spoke about that with Climate Adam in the first episode of my new podcast series, and I'll put the video link somewhere over here. So watch that if you want to know more about how to talk about climate change. And of course, if you'd like to sign up to support the channel on Patreon, then you can do that over here. All right, catch you in the next one. I'm so hot.